I can promise you one thing, and that is that nobody are watching on YouTube, whether it's somebody big, famous creator like Charlie Kirk or Tim Pool or whatever, Joe Rogan. None of these people have any idea what the hell is going on in Iran. None of these people know what's going on in the Middle East. Some of them might have a little bit more historical background than or understanding than others, but nobody knows what's going on. As a libertarian, my instinct is to say it's a bad idea for the United States to be getting involved in this directly. I think it was a bad idea for Israel to strike Iran. I'd prefer that this didn't happen. I think most people would. But the one thing I just can't get out of my head is that there are people actively supporting Iran. Saying that the United States shouldn't get involved, and being an American or anybody living in the West and supporting Iran is a moron. Iran is ran by an evil regime. Now, you could feel a great deal of sympathy for the Iranian people, of course. Same way you could feel a great deal of sympathy for the Palestinians and a great deal of sympathy for Israelis. You feel sorry for all these people in all these countries. And if you don't feel sorry for all of the innocent people across the board, then you're picking sides and you're kind of a hypocrite. If you're like, it's the innocent people, they're innocent people all across the board. But we need to talk about and we need to understand who is running these countries. And the Iranian leadership, the Khomeini, these are evil people. They're just evil. For people in the United States of America to call Republican voters schmazzies and all these horrible, terrible names, and then turn around and support Iran and root for Iran in this conflict, just shows how broken the human mind has become. I don't know if it's social media, and maybe I'm being fed this in the algorithm, and it's not as wide. I certainly am an advocate of saying that social media is not a real place. So maybe I'm being fed this, and it's nowhere near as popular a way of thinking as it appears to be on social media. But I don't care if it's like 5% of the population. How can you hate your fellow Americans because they have a slightly different political view than you, and then go and support a regime that if you were queer in their country, they will throw you off a building? If you are a woman and you expose your wrist in public, the morality police can show up and beat the snot out of you with batons. And that's okay. That's an acceptable, that's their law. That's how the leaders of those countries operate. The idea that there's not a good guy and a bad guy, right, in this conflict is false. We are the good guys. They are the bad guys. Does that make our government good? No. Does that make their people evil? No. Because we have a very flawed government with very flawed people who run it, and we've done some pretty darn horrible things and continue to do some pretty darn horrible things. But the values that underpin Western civilization in the United States and Great Britain and our Western European allies, and the values that underpin that culture in that country, I mean, there's not a conversation, there's not a comparison to be held here. I had this conversation the other night with a friend, and I said, if Israel was unarmed tomorrow, if the Western world was unarmed tomorrow, and Iran was a unipolar global power, they would wipe the rest of the world out. The United States could go into the Middle East tomorrow and wipe them out. We don't do it because Western values don't allow for that. Not anymore, not in the way that we live today. The idea that there's some kind of moral equivalency between the United States and Great Britain and Israel and our allies and the Iranian government and Putin and communist China is insane. And if for you to think that, it means that you've been corrupted by social media, by your college professors. The idea that you could be in a university setting and put a communist flag outside of your office as a professor, that should be every bit of offensive to people as a schmatzy flag hanging outside of a person's office. But for some reason, it's not. We're okay with communism now. And we look at Western civilization and market-based economic principles, freedom, individual liberty, those things, there's a group of people in this country who think those things are evil. And you have fallen for a Chinese psyop operated through social media that has broken your brains, has perpetrated our learning institutions, has perpetrated Hollywood. I just don't understand it at all.